Oh, we are live.
Woo!
Good morning, Melissa.
Good morning, Leslie. How are you?
I'm doing good, and I see sunshine and blue sky, which is really very nice.
It
I've been
finally feels
missing
like
it.
spring. I'm very excited. I don't know that it's going to stick, but I'm going to enjoy it while it's here.
Exactly. I think we're going to get some more cold snaps through, but that's okay. Um, so before everyone gets here, I thought I would pull up some of the comments that were already in our event post. And I
Yes.
want to know what you thought about this because obviously I'm not the only one who was surprised about this 5 generations under
Yeah.
one roof.
Yeah, there
This was
are.
neat.
I think a lot of people don't. It's not something we necessarily think about every day, but absolutely all the way from, the oldest generation is the silent generation, and then we have it all the way through to, this new Gen Z. So
Yes.
there are 5 generations, and I think it presents a lot of opportunities, but it also presents some need to think differently about how we're communicating with people and how we're working.
And your, I picked out one of your comments because it's so true. This topic is endlessly fascinating to me, to you,
It is.
and we're not the only ones
Yeah.
because I'm going to pull up Jessica Weiss said something similar. She's been thinking about it a lot lately because when you start thinking about it, it starts to explain and makes us more aware.
Yes, absolutely. And that's always a good thing.
And then I have one more to pull up before we start saying
Yes.
welcoming everyone.
Yes.
Lauren said, if we don't understand each other, we miss creating deeper connections.
Yep.
That's why we need to remember that there's 5 generations there.
100%.
And of course, we're going to talk about the myths and the truths today. So I'm going to pop up so people should tell us welcome, like, where are you
Yes.
calling in from? We want to know. We'll say a few welcomes before we introduce ourselves. Rana Deb was here before the live.
Oh, thank
Welcome.
you.
L- and Lynn is here. Welcome, welcome. We love seeing you. Renee is here. Welcome. And I think that's the only comments that are coming up. It seems like if there are more comments, there's a little bit of a delay,
There's
everyone.
definitely
So
a delay.
w-
Yes.
we will keep our eye on it. So we will start with thank you. I was thinking, what should I say? Oh, thank you for joining us.
Oh,
Welcome to our new viewers and our returning viewers. This is Let's Talk About It Careers, Business, and LinkedIn, episode 17, which with this very interesting topic, 5 generations at work, the myths and trends. So we'll start with introducing ourselves. Melissa?
hi everyone. I'm Melissa Cohen. I am also here in New York City, and I am really excited to have this conversation today. I'm a personal brand and LinkedIn strategist. So I help people find their voice, build their brands, and build their business right here on LinkedIn. This topic's also really fascinating to me because last year I co-authored a book with Cindy Goodwin Sack called Your Career Resilience Blueprint. And I think this topic really ties into that really nicely because, there's a lot to consider when you're working with people from vastly different generations in the same organization.
Such a great point and a great book.
Oh,
If
thank
you haven't gotten it, I'm putting a plug. Get the book.
you. Thank you.
So I'm Leslie Nydick, and I help people get unstuck from conflict with a focus on communication and negotiation. The communication side makes me really interested in this topic of 5 generations at work. Last week, I had the absolute pleasure of leading a negotiation program for some Masters of Law students who came from Spain. They were actually from many countries, but their school is in Spain. The best part was being reminded of how learning really is mutual. It's not just the students, it's me as the instructor. Their questions, their comments, it just pushes you to think further. And I'm very inspired and more inspired by our conversation that we're going to have today.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go into the comments and see, because we do have more. So we have more people to say hello to. And I'm just pushing back. If you see, let's see who's here. Yay, Lorena from Chicago. Thank you for joining us. And then I love someone's pointing out, I know, episode 17,
Crazy.
LinkedIn user. When we go to LinkedIn, we'll see who you are. Welcome.
Hi, Jason.
Oh, we got to see him in person. Now it's weeks ago, wasn't it? It felt like
Yeah, it is
yesterday.
weeks ago.
Oh, and Jeannie is she will be an early riser because, as she has told me, I think she's always on New York time, no matter how long she's lived in California. Oh, Melissa Ann Houston, thank you for being here. You are also an early riser. And we have a few more to say hello to, and then we'll start.
Hi.
Karen Cooper, hello, so good to see you. And David, welcome from Skokie. And I think the others are LinkedIn users, so we welcome you. I know Long Island is in the house, and a few others. So we'll catch you. And LinkedIn users, since a few of you, we can't see your names, maybe type in your name in your next comment.
Oh, it's Susan Stoklosa. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Susan.
I'm so
Great
glad
to
you
see
made
you. So we have a question for the viewers. So, I skipped my question here. So first, let me point out, Melissa mentioned at the very start, and some of you might have missed it, that the oldest generation is the silent generation. That's the one that ended in 1945. And yes, some of them are still at work. All you have to do is look at our politicians. Then we have the baby boomers that ended in 1964. Gen X ended in 1980, millennials in 2000, and then our youngest generation in the workplace is Gen Z, and they ended in 2020. So, of the generations, which one represents the largest portion of the current workforce? Do you have maybe Melissa knows, or do you have a guess?
I believe I know. Would you like me to guess and you can tell me if I'm right?
Yeah.
I believe the largest percentage of the workforce is actually millennials.
It's a good guess. I'm going to hold off on answering to see if we have any. And again, I can tell that the comments are slow. We have more hellos that we're going to say in a moment.
Yes.
But I don't see the guesses. I think someone might have, oh, wait, I have one guess. Millennial.
We have a boomer guess and a millennial guess and another millennial.
And I saw a boomer guess, and comments aren't working so well today, folks, on our end, not your end. So I can't wait to get back to them after the event. So at the moment, I think I'm seeing some of them, but they're hard to pull up. Some Gen X was a guess. The boomers, I see that vote. Audio is not working on my end. So I think that might just be your issue, Terry, because others, I believe, hear us. David guessed Gen X, Jeannie guessed millennials, Karen guessed Gen X. Well, I'm going to tell you, it's millennials. Now, there's one quick bonus question. What percentage of the current workforce is millennials? This number surprised me.
I want to say it's over a third. I want to say it's around 35, 36%. I think it's somewhere around there.
Interesting. I was thinking something similar. I think the answer is going to surprise people. And again, I'm even getting messages. There's a little wonkiness with the comments and the connection. So I'm gonna go. We're not gonna be
Oh,
able to see all your guesses until later.
Chasen missed the
Yes,
question. So Chasen, the question now is what percentage of the workforce is the millennials? Because that is the generation that is most highly represented.
believe it or not, it's expected to be 75% in this year.
So,
So
really?
yes, yes. I checked. I have two different sources that said the same percentage or around the same percentage. That
That's
blew me away.
wild. Okay, I'm gonna look into that. I did not think it was anywhere near that high.
And what I wanted to look into, it made me think of perhaps geography, like different parts of the country may have different percentages of
Hmm,
that generation in the
true,
workplace. So that could have a big impact.
true.
Now I'm starting to see some guesses, the
Yeah.
40%. Karen Cooper was close with the 80%,
Yeah.
50%. So it's this is definitely a worthy topic. So we're going to get to our very first question, and I'll ask it and then I'll pull up the banner. So, Melissa, what is a myth that people have believed about you and your generation, and how have you debunked it or disproved it?
So I'm Gen X, and I actually did a LinkedIn post a while ago about the myths and realities of these different generations. And so the myth about Gen X is that we're very cynical, we're very disengaged, and obviously I don't think that that's true. Um, the greater reality of Gen X, I believe, is that yes, we are somewhat more independent, um, and we are also very resourceful. The fact is also that in many cases, Gen X is sort of viewed as the glue that holds teams together, and I really like that description. When I look back on the typical sort of childhood of our generation of Gen X versus, like I'm a mom, I'm the mom of a Gen Z. So how Gen Zs were raised and even in some cases, from what I know of how millennials were raised, we were raised a lot more independently, right? We were like in many cases those latchkey kids. And we had a lot greater independence. Things were very different. I remember when my daughter was born and we had to bring her home from the hospital and I told, my parents, oh, I have to learn how to put her in the car seat because they won't let you leave the hospital unless the baby is properly buckled in the car seat. And my parents could not get their head around that, right? Because we didn't have car seats back in my day.
No.
And I think that's just one example of from the earliest moments of how different, Gen Zs have been brought up versus Gen X. So I think we are a little bit more independent, but I don't think that that makes us disengaged. And I think that that's really important.
So agreed. And I just have to laugh at, I have a vision in my mind of like sitting in the front seat as a very young
Yes.
child. And that was okay. We just sat there. I don't even know if there were seatbelts in the car, but we'll get to that. So for me, many might not know, I am a baby boomer. I'm the youngest of the baby boomers, and I find that the events that shaped my generation really weren't my experience. I much more align with what Melissa was just talking about. But with my generation, let's start with the name of it, boomers. So it was because there was a baby boom. Well, not by the time I was born. In fact, my experience with schools, they were starting to close. There were much smaller, we had hundreds less in our high school graduating class than the prior years. So everything that they were experiencing wasn't, I was like, why am I a baby boomer? The boom was over. And then there were also some really world events that impacted them. Everything from the Vietnam War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and even the assassination of JFK. And for me, those were not even events, some didn't occur before I was born. I mean, some occurred before I was born. And then, or I was born, but I was completely unaware of these things happening. So when someone assumes I'm just like a baby boomer, they're mistaken. And that's the thing. And even just judging an entire generation on, and the stereotypes always kind of, it doesn't
It
sit
feels
well.
wrong. Yeah, it feels wrong. 100%.
It does. So I definitely see that there's some comments that have come through. So, oh, go boomers. Thank you, Jason. I saw that. Thank you. I'm going to go back a little bit because I know we missed some
We have an excellent comment
comments.
from Karen who said, "We were in
Who?
the wild. I legit had a shoelace with my keys at 9." Exactly.
Well, and we wore it around our necks.
Yep,
See,
exactly.
I feel like I'm an honorary Gen Xer.
You are a Gen Xer, Leslie. I proclaim you.
What else? There are many stereotypes for each generation. Absolutely. Great point, Jeannie. We were strapped into the car, even if there was an available seatbelt.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And go boomers, I had put that up, but I kind of like it, so I have to see that comment again. Karen, yes. Oh, these are all great comments. And again, everyone knows we both love going back into the comments after the
Absolutely.
event. And I think there'll be a lot of surprising comments because they're not all
They're
coming
very
through
slow
on our
coming in
end.
today. Yes.
So let's get to our next question, and I'll pull up the banner in a moment. Melissa, how have you managed differences in communication styles between the generations and between any of them?
Yeah. I think regardless of who you're communicating with, the same principles will always apply. And so for me, and I think you're going to appreciate these, Leslie, because I think these are going to resonate with you. Clarity and repetition. I think those are the keys no matter who you're communicating with. Clarity is of the utmost importance. And actually, I was commenting on a LinkedIn post today because what else do I do? And talking about how challenging written communication can be, right? So you can, I could write a sentence and I could read it in two different tones. And even though the words are identical, the feeling that you get from them and your takeaway from them is 180 degrees apart. So be really cognizant of that. If you're using written communication, you can't interpret the tone. And so the clarity is super, super important. And if it's possible, have a conversation in person. Pick up the phone at phones, right? Have a Zoom call. Have a quick, it's easy to be accessible face to face now. And sometimes that makes all the difference, right? Because you read an email and you're not sure that you're understanding the tone. And then I would say repetition, right? Because sometimes saying something just once is not enough and it doesn't sink in or the meaning isn't clear. So repeat the message and ask questions. I think that is super important. If you're not clear, whether you're on the giving end of the message or the receiving end, ask questions.
Such good points. And your point about the email or anything that's written, we know what voice we wrote it in, but the other person doesn't hear that voice or the tone. And sometimes tone is more important than the actual words. There was someone who used to send me an email, and I knew not to read it because the way she wrote it, I needed to hear her tone. It always sounded so negative, directive, just rude. And I'd just call her up and go, "Oh, I've got a problem with my computer. Can you tell me? I know you wrote me an email, but I can't open it." And then she'd say it. And I'm like, "Oh my God, she does not get that across in
Yeah.
her words. She leaves out so many of the nice words or the polite or what do you think or let me know." That all
Yes.
gets left out. But when she was talking, she expressed it. And I think uh, going back to baby boomers, where I was at, I think it's important to know, like tech wise, emails, texts, phones, that baby boomers, there is no other generation that saw more tech advances
Yeah.
because you need to be reminded. I
Yeah.
started with rotary phones. There was no such thing as call waiting. There were busy signals. If someone wasn't home, you just had to keep on calling them back until they were home.
Yeah.
Um, there was black and white TVs, not for long, but I did start with black and white TVs with
Same.
antennas,
I did too.
vinyl records. Um, the thing that really identifies the communication gap is that some of us adopted the tech right away. It was just like, oh, good, something new was coming. The Walkman with the cassette tapes in it, or I remember these phones that you could bring into your car. They were as big as a suitcase, but it
Yeah.
was a car phone.
Yes.
So you took it for emergencies.
Yes, because the call cost like $100.
Exactly. And I was quick to adopt most technologies, except I have to say I held on to my typewriter a little longer than I needed to. And I skipped 8-track tapes, which
Yeah.
for those who don't know what they were, don't worry, they were worth
Don't worry.
skipping. And then we went right to CDs. The key was to keep on adapting, and I just feel like that's what we have to do now. That all those tips that Melissa just pointed out, that when we're communicating with someone and either their words or their facial expressions or their body language tell you that they heard your message differently than you intended, then repeat it in a different way. Add clarity, ask questions, ask them to tell you, well, what did you think I said? And that can become a conversation. Um, the key is if you'd rather for me, if you'd rather text, I'll meet you in the text. If you'd rather stay virtual, I'll meet you there. And if you want to meet in person, great. Like just be flexible with what channel we're communicating with people in, because the disconnect occurs when we get stuck in that one channel.
Yes.
Now I think some comments are coming through. Now it may have to do with the guessing of the generations, or maybe no, it looks like they're more current because
We have
I'm
some good
seeing
ones.
some of the
There's some really good ones there.
the 8-track tapes were so hilarious. They were, weren't they? They were, I'm maybe exaggerating, but it felt like they were this big.
Okay, I don't think they were that big, but they were pretty big.
I'm gonna skip back. No hands free.
Yeah,
Yes. And Jeannie's emphasizing tone is very important. It has more impact than the words.
it does.
Absolutely. And Lorena's saying, I identify closer with the term zennial. Zennial. I got that right. Blend of Gen X and millennial generation, harnessing both of these generations' insights and characteristics. Great point. So I have to come up with like a boomer and an X combination. For next show, I'll come up with a name or in the comments. You know, if you see any, oh, Jason's typewriters. I loved my typewriter.
Yeah, I saw two really good ones. I saw that Jeannie mentioned the importance of active listening, which I think is really crucial. I agree with that completely. And then Karen just said, curious to know your thoughts about how many things are making a comeback, like vinyl. Um, and, for
Mhm.
me, I'm a Gen X. I really think it's about nostalgia. I think as a generation starts to get a little bit older, we start to have nostalgia for the things that were in our childhood and that made us happy. And I know personally, more than once, I have recently purchased something that, I owned like 30 years ago because it made me happy. So
Yes.
that's my thought. Boomiel.
Thank you, Jeannie. I might go with that. I'm gonna like
Oh,
play around with that in my mind. I where I go to on Long Island on a lot of weekends, one of the most popular stores in our little village is the record store. It
uh,
is just unbelievable. But the reason why I don't like going in there is because every time I see an album that I had and I see it as one of the highest priced, I'm like, oh my God, I
ah,
so undersold our records when I got
oh
rid of
yes,
them during a move.
oh yes.
Oh, I'm remembering. Oh, thank you, LinkedIn user, leg warmers and Madonna rubber bracelets.
100%. I had them all.
The memories are coming out. I still have a Walkman. I do too, but a more modern one. It is digital music. And there's another comment, legit my high school look. There's so many good ones. I
Oh
love that, David.
gosh, you remember Menudo? Oh my goodness, that's right.
Besides talking about like the communication between the generations, the myths and some of the truths, I just love I didn't expect the nostalgia conversation. This is great.
This
I
is
love
bringing
it.
me so much joy.
And of course, this one, I'm not going to bring out my old pictures. The big hair, don't care. All the
Aquanet,
stiff stuff hairspray. What
bring
was
the
that
Aquanet.
hairspray?
Aquanet.
Aquanet. Oh my God.
Oh yeah,
Oh, I could never run out of it.
the can was like this big.
I love it. We're really getting to that time. We're not
Oh
quite at
my
the
goodness.
end, but it gives us a real chance to kind of maybe make some concluding remarks. First of all, I want to remind people, see you on March 28th. That's
Yes.
our next show. So mark your calendar. You all know this monthly event is conversations between me and Melissa, but and with you. And we can't wait to continue them in the comments and the networking. That's really why everyone wants to have the conversations. Let's get to know each other and stay in touch. So we hope you'll join us on March 28th, but we still have a couple of minutes and maybe each of us have a closing remark. Melissa?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think this topic is so important, because I don't like stereotypes, right? And I think we really have to look past those myths and stereotypes and try to relate to people as our coworkers. And, I think it's very easy to dismiss someone as, a millennial or a Gen Z or a Gen X, you're too young, you're too old, you're too whatever.
Yes.
No, I think each and every one of us from every generation brings our own unique perspectives to the workplace. And if I could leave with one closing thought, it's we can all learn from each other always.
I love that. And also remember your own experiences. I remember what it was like in the workplace when people thought, oh, she's too young. She must not know that. And
Yes.
then, of course, it eventually becomes, oh, you're too old. You probably don't understand what we're talking about. Forget that. Just remember what your experience was and like look through it and just listen to what the person's saying. Don't let the generation determine whether they know or understand something. So thank you, everyone. We're
Thank
definitely going to see you in the comments. Thank you for your patience with today's mini tech issues between LinkedIn and StreamYard. That's okay. Gives us more time to chat in the comments, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much, everyone.